Hi, everybody. This is the Bricks and Bleachers podcast. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. Just a couple days remain in the month of June, and the Cubs are happy to see this month come to an end. We'll catch you up with the National League Central standings. Fan voting for the All-Star game continues, and the trade deadline is inching closer. Now, many were saying if the Cubs could go 500 in June, that would be okay. Cubs are close, but I think they're going to fall just short. 12-14 for the month of June right now with 2 days to go. It's been a tough month with a lot of injuries and a challenging schedule. Cubs are now 4 games back of the Milwaukee Brewers, and as the schedule would have it, the Cubs are wrapping up June with a 3-game set in Milwaukee with the division leaders. Series opener went to the Brew Crew last evening. More on that shortly. An overview of the month of June reveals the Cubs are greatly struggling on the road. It began in the first week of June, losing 3 of 4 in San Francisco. Then they dropped 3 of 4 in New York against the Mets. Then 3 of 4 to the Dodgers last week in Los Angeles. Look, all those teams are very good. 2 division leaders, another team that's probably going to make it into the postseason as well. And June has been a nearly historic month offensively for the Cubs, but not for the good reasons. Entering play on Monday, the Cubs' batting average in June was just 186. That's 4th worst team batting average ever in a single calendar month by any team. That's not just Cubs history. That's Major League Baseball history. 186, yet the Cubs are 12-13 during that stretch. Again, that's entering Monday's action. So seemingly no one in the Cubs lineup is immune from this downturn. Even Kris Bryant, who was off to a very hot start the first 2 months of the year, on pace, maybe even ahead of where he was in his MVP season, has had his struggles. Kris Bryant batting just 120 for the month of June. That's right, 120. Javi Baez just north of 150. Advanced metrics don't paint an any more positive picture for those guys or the team overall. Pitching staff with struggles too in the month of June. We talked about this previously. I think the last episode we talked about trends through the first 70 games, and I mentioned the Cubs starters just are not pitching deep enough into games, and that continues to be the case. Cubs starters averaging under 5 innings per start. Bullpen has had a lot of work, obviously. If the starters aren't going deep, that means the bullpen is getting a lot of work. They've performed very well until this past week. 3 games now in the past week have gotten away from the Cubs due to bullpen struggles. We're talking about 2 games in Los Angeles and the one last evening in Milwaukee. Ryan Tepera with an incredible stretch of 2 earned runs and 23 appearances. In fact, he was National League reliever of the month in June, or in May, I should say. But his last 4 outings have been disastrous. You tell me if that's being too harsh. 2 losses, the game that got away from him in Los Angeles Friday night. Same thing happened last night in Milwaukee. He's given up 6 runs in the past week. Let's talk about All-Star Game. Cubs have 5 players in Phase 2 of the fan vote. Kris Bryant, the leading vote getter at 3rd in Round 1. Javi Baez, the second leading vote getter at shortstop in the National League in the first phase of voting. You've also got Anthony Rizzo, Wilson Contreras, and Jock Peterson eligible for the current round of voting. It's phase 2 of the vote, and it continues through Thursday afternoon. You can vote on Major League Baseball apps. You can also just go to Cubs.com. Fans will pick the starting position players. Commissioner's office and the players themselves will choose the pitchers and the backups. Kyle Hendricks is borderline. Craig Kimbrell, I think, is in, and hopefully Andrew Chafin is too. He's been really great out of the bullpen for the Cubs. Anthony Rizzo left Sunday's game with back tightness. That's flared up on him a couple of times now this season. It's been a problem in recent years as well. He left Sunday. He missed last night's game. Most Cubs injury news right now, though, is good in the fact you've got Nico Hoerner in action again. He began his rehab stint with AAA Iowa on Sunday. Trevor Williams pitched in that game for Iowa, and reliever Justin Steele is with the Iowa club as well. Matt Duffy getting closer to returning. He's still a couple of weeks out, so I'm going to guess probably right after the All-Star break. Matt Duffy could be back with the Cubs. He's been sidelined by a back injury since late May. This and that, a look at news and notes from around Major League Baseball. I'm not afraid to say I am in the Shohei Ohtani fan club. I've mentioned him plenty of times on this podcast, and I'm sure many more mentions to come, even though he's not a Chicago Cub. He homered last night in New York, 26 homers on the year. That ties him with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for the Major League lead. Kyle Schwarber with 2 homers last night for the Nationals. I think I said those exact same words last episode. 2 home runs for Schwarber last night. He's been doing that a lot recently. If he's not player of the month in the National League for June, I will be shocked. Kyle Schwarber with 15 home runs in the last 17 days. No player in Major League Baseball history has pulled that off. Schwarber with, I think, 24 home runs now. He's into the 20s, I know that, but he's behind Ohtani and Guerrero. I believe he's 4th in the majors in home runs, as he's really lit it up recently. Friday night, Phillies pitcher Aaron Nola struck out 10 straight batters. Tom Seaver, the last pitcher to do that, and that was in 1970. And we talked about the Cubs' road struggles. 2 hugely impressive road streaks ended last week. And when I say impressive, we're talking about futility. Baltimore Orioles lost 19 in a row before finally getting a road win last week. They lost 6 straight road series via sweeps. Can't imagine that. The Diamondbacks had an even longer streak. They had a 24-game road losing streak, longest in MLB history. The win in San Diego for the Diamondbacks on Saturday was Arizona's first road win since April 25. Back to the Cubs. Game 1 of a 3-game set in Milwaukee last night. Kyle Hendricks with a tough first inning. We've seen that time and time again throughout this season. He always seems to calm down in the second inning and then cruise after that. He went 6 innings last night. Didn't look like he was going to go 6 the way that first inning went, but he was good after that. It was tied at 4 heading to the bottom of the 8th, and the wheels fell off. Ryan Tepera roughed up for 3 runs last evening. Brewers just kept hitting. Even after Tepera left, it didn't matter who was on the mound. Brewers put up 10 runs in the inning last night. They were at the plate for almost 40 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. It felt like over an hour. Eric Sogard eventually came on to pitch. He got the last out of the bottom of the 8th. It was his second pitching performance for the Cubs of the past 10 days. Brewers with a 14-4 win. Interesting note on Twitter late last night, early this morning from beat writer Jordan Bastian. This is the first time the Cubs have lost by 10 runs in a game that was tied after 7 complete innings. Previous worst for that scenario was an 8-run loss that happened in 2013 and then way back in 1939. That's via Jordan Bastian on Twitter, and that's a note he says came from the Cubs historian. So that was truly something that we have not seen before. All right, so Cubs have dropped 4 of 5, 10 of their last 14. Now 4 games behind Milwaukee in the National League Central. Brewers, one of the best teams in baseball since late May. Tonight, it's Zach Davies and Brandon Woodruff. Davies coming off a no-hitter. A combined no-hitter for the Cubs Thursday night in Los Angeles. You had Davies going 6 innings, then Tepera, Chafin, and Kimbrel with an inning apiece. It was masterful. Woodruff has already faced the Cubs twice this year back in April. He did not get a win in either of those contests, but he pitched very well, giving up just 1 run and 4 hits in 13 innings. First pitch tonight at 8:10 Eastern. Tomorrow, Wednesday afternoon, it's a 2:10 Eastern first pitch. Cubs get a break in that one as Corbin Burns has been scratched from that start. He'll be pitching for the Brewers in their next game on Thursday. Not sure who they're going to trot out there, but Jake Arrieta will be pitching on Wednesday for the Cubs. Both games on Marquee Sports Network. Tomorrow's game also the free game of the day on MLB.tv. So if you don't get Marquee Sports Network, you can still check it out on Wednesday. Much needed day off for the Cubs on Thursday, then 3 in Cincinnati. And don't count them out. Those Reds right behind the Cubs now in the National League Central. And we are out of time. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. All things Chicago Cubs in under 10 minutes. It is the Bricks and Bleachers Podcast.